Hello, I'm Michael Coles, and I am going to make my mother's famous Rugelach recipe. It's a recipe I grew up with as a kid, and my brother and sister and I used to fight over my mother's Rugelach. I didn't realize until I was an adult how tedious a job it was to make Rugelach, because my mother generally made it when we were away at school, and we'd come home and miraculously would have been sitting on the counter. It's a labor of love. It's not for the faint of heart, because it's very, very rich and made with the very best of ingredients like cream cheese and butter, none of the light stuff. And but when it's done, it's well worth it, and you'll have people cheering for more. It's great to have a great mixer. You can do this by hand, but it would be a little bit tedious. So the first thing we're starting out with is actually 2 packages or a pound of cream cheese, and I recommend, again, that you use name brands. This recipe seems to work a lot better when you have the very best ingredients. So we're going to cream the ingredients to begin with. So we started off with a pound of cream cheese. We're starting off with 2 packets of butter, or a half a pound of butter. And I generally let the butter sit out overnight so that it gets nice and soft, so that when you're creaming it, you've got a real good shot at the ingredients creaming pretty easy, so you don't have to take a lot of time to do that. Okay, so we've got basically, we're going to use a wire whisk to cream the ingredients. So we're going to do all the wet ingredients first. We'll start slightly, just a little low pressure. Once we get that kind of cream, we'll go ahead and we'll put in 2 eggs. And we'll cream that. I like to do the creaming in stages rather than try to put everything in at once and cream it all. Okay, you have 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then the next thing I like to add, we have 1 cup of sugar, and I like to go ahead and add that as the first dry ingredient, because the granulated texture of the sugar really helps cream the rest of the ingredients. And then we're going to add the baking powder, and I really recommend that you make sure you spread the baking powder around to make sure you get a thorough mix of the baking powder. It's really an important ingredient, so you get a little bit of a rise out of this dough. Okay, now we're going to start to add the flour, and I really recommend you do this a little bit at a time, maybe a cup at a time. And at low speed to begin with till all the flour gets wet. If you start turning it on too fast at the beginning, you're going to wind up having a big mess. Takes 4 1/2 cups of flour, more or less. And I say more or less because it's till you get the right consistency of the dough. There's 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and it was 2 tablespoons of baking powder. And the baking powder is semi-rounded spoonfuls. This is the easy part of the recipe. The hard part becomes actually making the Rugelach, which is a very tedious process. As I said, when I was a kid, I didn't realize how tedious it was, because it always miraculously appeared when I got home from school. If you've made pies before, the dough should have similar consistency, although it'll be a little wetter than pie dough. One thing I might want to point out is that after we did the creaming, which I used a whisk arm, I switched that to a beater arm for the dough process. It makes sure that you don't put so much air in the dough or have too fine a texture. We got to take this off, and what we're going to do This is about the right consistency. It's a little sticky, but we'll fix that with some flour as we start to actually make the rugelach itself. Now, of course, when I was a kid, and there happened to be a day when my mother allowed me to see this process, she always kept it a big secret. We would fight over who got to eat the dough off of the beater. I may have to fight with the people that are filming this right now, so we'll see. And if you're afraid to use your hands in making something, this is not a recipe for you, because this is very hands-on. Now, my mother, when she learned to make this recipe, she learned to make it up in the Catskills. And one of the things it said in the recipe was that you had to put this in the freezer for 24 hours before you could start to make it. And for years, that's the way it was made. I mean, I did the same thing. My background of being in the cookie business told me that there had to be more, that there had to be a reason for that. And what I realized was that they were making it in such big batches that they had to allow for the freezing process, which meant that they would put in that half a cup less of flour. I found that if you just put in that half a cup more of flour, that you could actually make this dough on the same day and actually be able to roll it out and have this great recipe. So here's the dough, and we're going to take this over now, and we're going to start the actual process of making rugelach. Okay, so now we're at the what I would call the fun part, but the tough part. You just basically grab a hold of this, and again, keep some flour around because you're going to have to work this. It's going to be sticky, so you need flour for rolling it out and making sure that you get the right consistency. And this is what I call the kind of kneading by hand to get that consistency. And you'll feel it when it's right. And obviously, if you start to roll it and it starts sticking to the rolling pin, then you know you get the wrong consistency. But the flour won't affect the final taste of the rugelach either. So we get it. This is feeling just about perfect now. And again, this is the tedious process. Good rolling pin. Again, put flour on the rolling pin and start rolling it out. Now, my mother, when she made this, she used to roll this out into like individual little triangles when she would cut them. And she would cut them all with a knife and make them basically just kind of one at a time. What I have found, and again, what we're really doing here is we're just going to roll it out, and you're going to be re-rolling much of this dough many, many times. I have found the great tool for making this is a pizza cutter. And basically what you wind up doing is you cut a nice rectangle out of this. And as I said, my mother used to do this by individual triangles. I found that if you just kind of make this into a piece that's about a foot by maybe 18 inches, you can start the triangles and put them all in at one time. These are about the right size. Oh, they're about, maybe 4 inches long. And then do the same thing on the other side. Now you take some egg, and you put egg over the dough. Just regular old mixed egg. Take your brown sugar, and you just put brown sugar over the whole process here. And then rub it in. Then grab some walnuts. Sprinkle walnuts across it as well. And then you grab a hold of one of the triangles. Start by folding the edges and then you start to roll them. Get a nice little shape. Bend them just a little bit to give them that nice crescent look. Grab another one. Fold the corners in. Folding the corners in is really more aesthetic than anything else because the ingredients are not going to fall out. But it just makes the rugelach look prettier. This is a good time to have an assistant. Can I have my assistant, please? It's very good to have a pretty assistant that can come in and help with this last part of the step. Donna, if you'll be... What you need to do is you dip each rugelach, which is a step I forgot. It's a very important step, but Donna can show you how you do this. You just take it and dip the whole thing in, and then put it into the walnuts, and it gives it that nice finish. So while I'm doing this, Donna can be doing that, and we'll get this tray set. We're going to bake this in an oven on a nice cookie sheet at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes. Rugelach won't show up golden brown or anything like that, and it might have a tendency to not look completely cooked either. It might completely baked, but they have you don't want to overbake them, because the purpose of this cookie is it is a little bit soft and crunchy at the same time in texture, and the dough always should taste a little, just slightly undercooked to give it the right consistency. But about 15 minutes, no more than 20 in a 350 degree oven. We now have a full tray of rugelach ready to go into the oven. I should mention that the one recipe will make somewhere between 100 and 120 pieces, depending, of course, on the size. You can make more if you wanted to, if you made them smaller. But an average size rugelach will make at least 100 pieces. So we're now putting it in the oven. This is a convection oven, which we've set for 350 degrees, and we'll bake this for no more than 15 minutes. Here we are with the finished product. This is about half of what the recipe would actually yield. But you can see how wonderfully beautiful they come out. I'm not sure that's correct English, but they are wonderful. They've got that beautiful little glaze because of the dipping of the egg with the walnut sticking to the top. So you wind up with this very sweet kind of nutty flavor that comes through in the rugelach. They're fabulous with coffee, and of course I would recommend caribou coffee.